Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dental Wolf YouTube channel. In this video, we have Aaron Fritsch from the Shared Practices podcast. So Aaron was a DS4 at my school last year, and I had the opportunity of talking to him a little bit, and he was so gracious to be willing to run through a practice valuation for us. So the practice valuation that he does is for a friend, and all the information's blocked out, as you'll see, and he uses the Shared Practices Valuation Spreadsheet. So it was really interesting for me to watch him go through this and hear him talk about all the different things that he looks for in a practice. For me, this was meaningful because Shared Practices is such an awesome resource, and to have Aaron demonstrate how to look at a practice meant a lot. So we'll dive right in.
All right, guys, so I'm going to walk you through how I go about evaluating a practice. First and foremost, this is not professional evaluation. I want to just say that this is more so you can get some practice financials. You could plug this numbers into the Shared Practices financial sheet here, and then get an idea if this is practice even worth pursuing. It's more so just to weed out the junk so you're not paying a bunch of money for professionals. You still do need to get a practice evaluation, lawyers, CPAs, whatever you need to do for that. But this is just a quick run through. All right, so here's the spreadsheet that I use. It's from Shared Practice. You can get it on the line. Email George or Matt, or go to the website and you can actually get this. It's broken down into these certain sections. Up here at this top corner is where you're going to put, I don't know, basic information about the practice. On this right side, this is the real input. You input all things in this cells all the way down here, and then it'll actually populate over here. Sometimes I'll jump over here and fill this part in, but you have to be really careful because there's actually, these cells have formula in it. So if you go in here and start adjusting these and you save the document, you might lose these formulas, and then all of a sudden this is not going to work. Okay, so the couple of documents that you actually will need from a broker. There's going to be one, this is the P&L, and the other one is this right here. This is the ADA production by procedure code. So this is the breakdown of what the doctor has done, or the hygienist, I guess the office as a whole has done, and it's broken down by procedure codes here. I will say that the P&L and the procedure codes don't always look like this. They come in all shapes and sizes. They have all a bunch of crazy information in it. So it does take a little bit of time to figure out what is necessary and what is not necessary. I haven't actually done this practices here of my buddies that he sent it to me, so I can actually do this on. But we'll work our way through here. If I may get stumbled up on some things, but I'll show you the ways that I kind of work around it to kind of just use the way the spreadsheet is set up to actually get ourselves a pretty close estimation of what we think this practice will actually be worth. All right, so new patients per month. Typically, this is going to come in the big broker's sheet they send you. They're going to send you this whole huge packet, and it's going to have this new patients per month in there. If they do not, this is what I come to do. You can come over here to this particular code right here is a D0150. It's a comprehensive oral eval. This is when a new patient comes, this is the code that you actually do use. And again, there's other ways that a practice can actually get a new patient. They could be, limited oral evals or things like that. But this is usually the code that a person will use when a new patient is coming in. So if that's the case, this practice had 239 new patients in the full year. Let me get back to my. So what I'll do here, so and again, I don't know the full amount because I don't have the actual broker's thing, but I'm gonna say 239 divided by 12. So I'm gonna say this practice, sees, I don't know, 19 new patients per month, which is decent. A quick ops, again, I don't really know what this practice is. It's, again, let's just say 6 for the sake of it. Who cares about hours open for a week? Doesn't really matter. Listing price, again, I don't really know what the listing price of this practice is, so I'm just going to say $750,000 just for a guess. Updated equipment or not. So if you're looking at the practice and it has I don't know, it's all digital, has newer chairs, has working equipment, doesn't have wood paneling on the wall, things like that. If it does, you can say yes. Practice loan years, again, it go from 7 to 10 years. I usually put just 10 for this. For the sake of this, I put 10. Loan rate, again, it's all variable, but I'm gonna put 5. And then the working capital, I usually just say 10% of the loan amount, but again, all variable and all dependent on your actual thing. Okay, so you see I filled it in here. It jumps over here. It auto-populated these actual sections for us, and then we can move on to the next section. Okay, so coming over here to the P&L. If you look up here at the top, this one's actually kind of broken down pretty nice because it actually has the operative production, you know, from the doctor and the hygiene production from the hygiene department, and then the total practice collections. Okay, again, so gross collection, there's a couple different terms that you're going to see. You're going to see total adjusted production. You'll see gross collections. You'll see gross productions. They're a little bit different. Gross production, is the total amount that the practice collects. And this kind of gets into a little tricky. So that's if they're using like their UCR fees, which means usual customary rate. That's like the actual, what the doctor says that let's say for a crown costs $1,000. That's what the doctor says the crown costs. That's his UCR fee. If that doctor does 1 crown, his gross production would be $1,000. But if you jump over here, this total adjusted production, this adjusted production number means that if the doctor takes insurances, and for that specific crown, that insurance says that you can only take $800 for it, that doctor did not make $1,000, he made $800. And that's that adjusted production amount. Okay, and then you go into collections. So again, if that crown costs $800 for our adjusted production, because that's what the insurance actually says that it's worth, but we only collect, you know, $700 of it, then that's going to be our actual collection amount, is $700. Okay. In this case, we're just getting the total gross collections. Let me look through this real quick to see if we actually have. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So at this point, gross collections, we're going to say that this practice actually, their adjusted production is this number right here, the collection amount. Okay. 828,526. Enter. Okay, so that's our total amount that this office produced. There you go, total doctor production. You can actually see right here, it says operative production. That is the total doctor production. So you're gonna put that right here in this number. Okay, total hygiene production. Come up here, again, hygiene production, right there. All right, so this brings me to a good point here. You know, our total adjusted production is 828,500. The doctor produced 662,000 of it, and the hygiene produced 165,000. That gives a hygiene to production ratio of 20%. In this case, we would say this practice is a little doctor heavy. If we can get one, a good ratio is between 25 to 30%. You're looking at a practice of that, you're gonna be like, okay, that's a pretty good number. If you get one where the hygiene production is higher than 30%, then all of a sudden you're like, hey, there's a bunch of meat left on this bone. This doctor might be underproducing. If you want to buy a practice, you can actually, you know, go in there and start producing quite a bit more because there is a lot of work still left in the hygiene department. Okay, so let's keep working our way down here. All right, so staff salary. Staff salary is going to come down here on the right side, come down here. And you're going to see these cells right here: wages family employees, wages officer, and wages staff. Wages officer is the actual doctor salary. Officers means doctor. The wages of staff is the staff. So you can put the doctor's salary in this cell, okay? But if you fill it in here, if you look up here, here's where it actually is supposed to populate over to, this total doctor salary. But if you click this, we have this huge long formula right here. That formula is actually just going to take the doctor production amount. It's going to take 30% of that, or in this case, 33% of that, and then it's also going to minus 33% of the lab bill. So once we actually fill the lab bill right here in lab fees, it'll populate this cell. If this P&L actually says what the doctor's salary is, you could just input it into this cell right here. And again, don't save it because you'll lose this formula. So if you want to, you could save as and save it as a new document, but do not save over this master document if you put any number here. All right, so if you come to this P&L, staff salary, 440,000. But you see this big column right here, this is adjustment column. There's a lot of times the brokers will do adjustments to normalize the actual P&L. And this is something you gotta be cognizant of. A lot of times they'll adjust off crazy things like, no, this doctor has too much staff, so I'm just gonna adjust off one employee of $50,000 because you don't actually need that employee. Unless you're gonna go in there and fire that employee, that $50,000 should still be on there. So you have to be really careful with this adjustment column. In this case, they're adjusting off $246,502. If you come over here, we have an explanation. So what's this saying? It's saying there's an actual associate and a doctor's compensation on here. So in this case, what I'm assuming is that this $246,000 is the actual associate's income that they're adjusting off. So if you're buying this practice as like you're going to buy this practice and put an associate in there or stay with a 2-doctor practice, you want to keep this full amount here. Oh, I see what you're doing. Okay, so actually, so this says associate and doctor's compensation. They're actually just adjusting out the doctor's salary here. So what is it getting for? So 440,000 for staff salary. They actually don't have an officer wages or doctor salary on here. So this $246,000 is actually the doctor's salary that they're adjusting out. So the staff salary is not this 440, it's 440 minus the doctor's salary, which leaves you with 194,000. So if we come down here, we come to staff, we're gonna put in 194,178. Okay, so that adjustment that we adjusted off, which is the doctor's salary, this 246, again, we can put it right here. And if I remember, I don't think this actually jumps to the right. Yeah, it does not. So doctor's salary, if you want to put a very specific amount, come over here to the doctor's salary spot, put 246,502. And there we go. We have our doctor's salary in there. Okay, as we go down, payroll tax. Payroll tax, I get a little confused on all the taxes here, but a lot of them are all come out from the same actual spot. So payroll tax is the taxes that you're going to pay on your salary. So again, payroll processing fees, that's typically where I put the payroll taxes, 24451. Okay, and look in how you can tell that that's the right spot. If you come over to this cell right here, double click it. This is your total staff cost. So this is everything that's going to add up to end up for your total staff cost. So payroll tax, we know it's the taxes on the payroll of the staff. So as long as we have it in one of these cells here, it's going to go to the right spot and give us the right percent here once everything's said and done. So you don't have to be exactly perfect as long as you know it's going to the right cell here. All right, so associate, other labor, again. Okay, so we had an associate there that this is more, I'm assuming this is going to be a temp staff because associate is not going to only come in for $1,900. So again, for temp staffing, I'm going to put $1,900. Lab fees. So lab fees here, you're going to come over to this right side. You're going to look for lab fees. Lab fees is right here. So we're doing $42,680. All right, clinical supplies. Again, you can look down here. A lot of times when I can't really find it here, if I'll just Control F and I'll put clinical. Oh, I think it's because I'm above it. Anyways, you can Control F and actually search it. But clinical supplies, so it's showing up as dental supplies here, so that's fine. So clinical supplies, dental supplies, same thing. We're to come here and put 66612. Office supplies is right above clinical supplies, 6388. And then miscellaneous expenses. So miscellaneous expenses is here. So there's going to be depending on the P&L, there's going to be a lot of fees that you don't really know where they go. When you don't know where they go, I typically put them right here in this miscellaneous expense. So that's going to be 574. Okay, so we have all that all sorted out. Okay, let's keep working our way down. Rent payment. So now we're going to come over here to rent. Okay, so insurances. So again, sometimes they're broken down, sometimes they're not. At this point, I can really put this insurance anywhere. So you can put it, general liability, health insurance, disability, all those things. Any of those all come out to the same exact spot. So I'm just going to put it here under health insurance. 5.0.7. And again, this is where you're going to have to use your own discretion and use your mind to figure out which one will actually fit where. Okay, so this is one that always comes up a lot. The bank charges and merchant fees. Here it is. I always get that one confused. And I also forgot this. So on this specific one, you can actually click in the ones that are kind of like questionable. If you click it, it'll actually tell you, give you a little update of what actually it is. So it can help you figure out which cell goes where. Okay, so this one here, this is actually interesting that it's actually broken out like this. This one's discretionary expenses. All of these ones here, like this practice doesn't have a lot running through it, but sometimes you look at a practice where they have like, $900 a month car payment. They're traveling like crazy. Their CE they're going to, some are like 30 grand, 40 grand a year. Gifts they can give to people. These type of things here, while they're being expense that's going to show up, it's actually going to end up down here in this non-EBITDA expenses. And these are ones that if you bought the practice, you're probably not going to be running a $900 a month car payment through it. So these are actually things that you can add back onto your income if you were to purchase this practice and not use those things. That kind of jumps me to a real specific point. All right, EBITDA, this weird number called EBITDA. EBITDA, all it is you take how much the practice produces, you take out all the expenses, and you're left with an actual income amount. That income amount, whatever that number is, let's say we have $1 million practice, we have $600,000 in expenses. That leaves us with $400,000, which would be your profit. If you took out what the doctor paid himself as a salary, let's say they took a salary of $200,000, that leaves us with $200,000 left over, and that's our actual EBITDA amount. That is the true business profit. Which another way to look at it, if you were to put an associate in that exact practice, you would be making $200,000 off of that practice. And again, I can explain that more later if need be. But let's go through these real quick and just put these in. Oh, I guess one big thing that I forgot to do. So here on adjusted production, you have this $828,000 we did earlier. In this case, we don't have where it actually will say like what the office actually collected. So we're just going to assume that those are actually the same thing. So here, if you put 828,526, that should populate all that out. Let me make sure this looks all good. Okay, all right. So this is a P&L all filled out. And again, best part's actually pretty straightforward. All you got to do is go line by line, find it on this side, fill it all out, so it'll populate this whole side of here. So let's work our way through it. Okay, so we have 828,000 for our total adjusted production. Our collection, again, in this case, I put it exactly the same because we're not actually broken down different. Let me see if it actually has the collections amount here at the bottom. 841. Yeah, so this actually, they collected a little bit more, which actually does happen sometimes. Here we go. Okay, so I messed up at the beginning. Okay, so here's the actual production report. This is what was done in the office, the fee that the office charges, and then the amount. And so actually, if you come down here, this number right here, total production charges, this is actually the production of the office. I apologize. I don't want y'all to get to that point. That's going to mess you guys up. And again, so this says total adjusted production. This should say total production. Anyways, doesn't matter. This is the actual number you put here. 1213203.85. And then again, once we come back over here to the P&L, that's going to give us this number here is the actual collection amount, which would be here. Okay. So if you come in here and look at the collection rate, it's pretty low for this practice. So that means they're producing 1.2 million, but only taking home, 828,000. And that could be from a really high PPO involvement where they're getting really big write-offs for what their actual fees are. And along with maybe having some trouble collecting from the patients. It's probably a twofold. 68% is relatively low, honestly, in this case. Okay, so let's see, let's go through it. So again, 1.213, I apologize for that mistake, but that's your actual production amount. Our collections is 828,000, which we got here. That gives collection rate 68%. And then once all of this is populated down here, we actually have an overhead amount. So overhead means our actual bills that we have to pay. We have to pay for almost $453,000 just to break even. That gives us a 55% overhead, which is actually pretty dang good. This is I would be happy if my overhead was at 55%. That's a relatively profitable practice. Okay, and again, we talked about hygiene to production ratio. Production breakdown, we're going to do that in just a second. We go to those production codes. Doctor salary, that's what we put there. Okay, so this comes down to that one term right here, EBITDA. So, like I explained before, I come right here and show you. So our total overhead expense is $452,000, right? Our production was the $828,000. Our total owner income is $375,828. So that is where's it at? Right here, the production minus our overhead or our bills. That gives us a total owner income of $275,000, which is this number right here. That's your net income. From that net income, if we subtract out the total doctor salary, so that's what we would pay the doctor just to do dentistry with his hands, we are left with $129,326. This is your actual business profit. This is the difference between if you're an associate in the practice making this much, but if you own the practice, you get to make this much more money owning this practice for a total amount of $375,000. Practice profit margin of 16%, which is pretty good. And again, the practice valuation multiple. So this is when you put everything together based on the income, your net income based on your price, it's a multiple of 3.78. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Why is that not populating? Because I didn't write the listing price here. Okay, so once you actually have that all set up, we have our net income and our overhead and our EBITDA value. So when we evaluate a practice, there's two ways we can actually do it. You can either evaluate it based on the EBITDA number, if you're going to, bind the practice to put an associate into it, or we can base it onto the net income. That's if you're going to buy a practice and you're going to be the solo doctor of that practice. So the typical way we like to do it, we like to have these ranges. There's ranges. For the EBITDA ranges, we like to stay between 2.5 and 5. So what that means is if we take this EBITDA value and we multiply it by 2.5, that's going to put us down at this low number. If we take this EBITDA value and multiply it by 5, it's going to give us this high number. And so for this EBITDA amount of this practice, a good price range would be between these two numbers, okay? If you look right here, this 5.8, this is saying this practice at $750,000 of actual, the practice price, it's actually valued at 5.8. So you're like, well, that's higher than 5. Technically, yes. But if you're in a crowded metro area, high cost of living place, these ranges can be skewed one way or another. And so this might not be that high. If this is in rural Texas, I'm going to say this is high, but this is in a really nice part of Dallas where you really want to live, then you could probably be like, okay, might be able to justify this price. Net income again is another one of those multiples, but you're going to be between 1.3 on the low end and then 2.5 on the high end. So you're going to take your net income number, multiply it by 1.3, and you get this number, or multiply it by 2.5 and get that number. So in this case, at that price range of, $750,000, this price is priced pretty well in this. So if you were a solo doctor coming into it and you're going to stay a solo doctor, you'd be like, hell yeah, this is a well-priced practice for this actual net income amount. If you're coming to put an associate in there, you're going to be going by this EBITDA value, and then all of a sudden you can be like, this is a little bit on the higher end, and you need to start really thinking about it. Okay, as we go down here, cash flow. This is basically all what I was just talking about there, just broken down again. Collections, overhead, salary, EBITDA. This is the annual debt service. So based on these numbers up here, your $750,000, 10%, you're going to pay this loan off in 10 years at 5% rate, $75,000 working capital. That's going to end up costing you $105,000 a year to service that note. And your leftover EBITDA number, this number right here is $24,000. So you might be thinking, man, that's kind of low, but you're making $246,000 the salary you're taking plus $24,000. Yeah, that's not really that bad, $275,000. The way I typically like to look at it, if my EBITDA number covers the debt service, then you're in good shape. That's a profitable enough practice to where it makes business sense to actually purchase a practice like this. Sometimes you're going to look at these and your annual debt service could be $105,000, but your EBITDA on the practice is going to be $50,000. So in that case, you're going to be paying out of your salary that you're working with your hands to make. You're going to be having to pay for this note of this practice. Then all of a sudden it doesn't make much business sense. Overhead breakdown. So again, these are kind of all variable. An aggressive person will say 20% staff cost is fantastic. Somebody who likes to be a little bit not more heavy in staff, but have staff assisting with a lot more things are okay with it up to 30%. But anywhere between 20 to 30% is okay. 25 is a good middle ground. Depends on if you want to do lean or mean, you're going to be going more towards 20. If you want to be more employee driven, then you're going to be more than 30%. Supply cost, again, anywhere from the 6 to 8 range. Lab 6 to 8 range. Facility, try to keep it 6 to 10 range. Marketing budget, again, this is somewhere some people are saying, hey, you need to be spending 10% of your marketing. But they end up saying this is more like a zero-sum game. Like, hey, I spend 10% of my budget on marketing, but then all of a sudden I'm producing way more dentistry. So then all of a sudden that drives all of these other costs down. So again, you're gonna have to figure out your own philosophy on that. Office supplies, again, 5-6 range. There's a actual episode with Hunter Smith where he actually breaks down these ranges in specific thresholds or whatever. I don't know what the term is, but the certain ranges. I don't really know them off the top of my head. The two that I really look for in a practice to get a good sense if it is in good shape, comes the fixed costs. So the fixed costs are your total staff costs and your facility expense. So those are the two things that you can't really change when you buy a practice, unless you go in and fire a bunch of people. But those are two things you can't really change. As long as those two are under the 38% mark, then it's going to be a decent practice. If it's under 30%, then this practice is already going to be profitable. but I usually just go and I'll just add up the staff costs, add up the facility expense, and figure out those two real quick. And that's a really, really quick and dirty way to see if it's even a practice worth looking at. Okay, blah, 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 come all the way down. It adds all those up. Again, that's the overhead expense that we figured out earlier. Up here again, so this is the non-EBITDA expenses. This is, again, if you double click this, it's gonna populate all these over here. So these are all ones that the owner could be putting money into, and it's an expense, but you may not be using those same expenses if you buy this practice. So this could potentially be added back onto your owner income. Sometimes it's a pretty big number. In this case, not a very big number, so that's okay. There's your wages, blah, 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 overhead. That's when you add in the salary of the doctor onto your overhead expense. That's your total overhead. Okay, so that's that all filled out. This is the first step when I go through it for the P&L. Again, the big things here is the multiple ranges. I look here to make sure that those are within the correct thresholds. I'll always look at the hygiene production ratio. Again, higher than almost the 30%, above 30% is a better practice to buy because there can be more meat left on the bone. And then again, I want to make sure my EBITDA covers my debt service. So I want to make sure this number ends up being positive. Okay, after I do that, we're going to jump over here to this. So this is the ADA by production code. So this is where we're going to figure out how big the actual practice is based on like number of patients that there are. If the doctor is not aggressive, because it's to kind of get an idea of how aggressive his treatment planning is. So you come down here, production reports by code. This is the ADA production report by code. And all you're going to do is work your way down. Sometimes these don't come in alphabetical order. They come in whatever one has done most. So sometimes it takes a little more searching. Luckily, this one is in numerical order, so it's a little bit easier. Okay, 0120, come here, 0120, it says POE. So this is an actual really important metric that I look at a lot. POE and hygiene adult pro fees. This gives you an idea of how robust the patient pool is. POEs, you can do these 2 times a year. So this practice this year did about 1,500. If you divide that by 2, you're getting about 750, whatever that is divided by 2, 750-ish patients in this practice that are coming to you on a yearly basis. It's a little bit on the small side. It's depending on the practice. I typically like for single doctor practice, I want this number above 2. If you're getting multiple providers, you might need 3,000, 4,000, depending on how many extra providers you actually have. 0150, that's one we talked about earlier, 239. So again, here's a 1110. This is an adult prophy code. Come here, so 1060. So again, 1060. That's actually a pretty low number for a practice of this productive. Again, you can have 2 hygiene visits per year. So we're in the 500 range. That's not a very big or robust patient pool. Again, I'm starting to think, oh man, this doctor's actually getting more out of his patients than maybe I could as a new grad. I'd rather have more at-bats with way more hygiene checks, way more hygiene visits, and have more chances to actually get treatment out of, rather than doing big treatment plans on small amount of patients. 1120, it's a child code, 2210. Okay, so again, here's the 4,000, your perio code. So I'm gonna come down, 4910. 4910, all right, so periodontal maintenance, 415. 4341, scaling root planing. All right, 305, so that's actually, sometimes you'll see scaling root planing in like 10. So this is actually a bigger number than I actually expected, which is good. That means your hygiene department's actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. 1206 is fluoride. Now look at them. They're doing a bunch of fluoride too, which is nice. These are the adjunctive codes. Like, this is ways to make hygiene more profitable. You know what I'm doing? Fluoride, sealants, perio. If these are all low numbers, that's a good way to see that you can come in and make a hygiene practice more profitable. If they're already doing those things, then you want to keep it the same. 1351 is sealants. I don't see any sealants. Okay. Crowns. So now we'll go to 2700. So what this means, crowns is 2700, 2799. So that's encompassing all the types of crowns. You know, sometimes you're only gonna have 2740s, which is ceramic crowns. Other times you actually will have PFMs, you know, those type of things. So in this case, we're gonna have equal 119 plus, and then we have 3/4 porcelain right here, so +4. So again, I'm adding this one in here because this is 2783. That falls within that range of 2700 to 2799. 2393 is a 3-surface operative code. Right here, so we're gonna do 61, 2394 is 4-surface, 537. Okay, so this is actually, this is interesting. If we come over here, I jumped to this one quick because this is the crown to 3/4 surface filling ratio. So for every crown, this person is doing, you know, they're doing 5 times more big fillings than they are crowns. A lot of times you're going to see it more like the 3-surface and 4-surface fillings are very small and the crown number is very high. In this case, where this is a 0.21, this guy's doing way more really big fillings than crowns. So I'm salivating over this because all of a sudden, like, hey, this guy is doing a bunch of patchwork. I can come in here and start doing some more crowns and I can boost production like crazy just based on that fact. 1-to-1 is what you would, I would say like more 1 to a 3 is more your conservative. When you start getting more, and you know, you get the 4, 5, 6, 7 range, that's all of a sudden more, they're, I don't want to say more aggressive, they just prefer to do crowns rather than big fillings. But again, in this case with the 0.21, I'm like, hell yeah, we got some crowns to do in this practice. Let's see here. So new patient flow, again, that's this right here, the comprehensive oral exam divided by 12, potential new patient flow. So this is some crazy number that George calculated. I don't know how I calculated that, but that's like the potential if you are doing everything right, reappointing, hygiene appointments, all those things, you have the potential to actually have 39 new patients. Again, here's our recall volume. So this is going to be based on, I don't remember exactly it's based on, but I think it's going to be your pro fees and periodontal maintenances coming together, I believe. 80, 81, 82. Yep. Yeah, so pro fees, child pro fees, and periodontal maintenance, and then he's formulated a way to actually do that. So where your amount of patients coming through recall is about 917. Again, a little bit on the small end. And your hygiene demand is how many hours per week you could be doing hygiene. So 44, that's 8 times 5, 40. So you can do a little bit more than one hygiene going all the time. So again, this is kind of small. You'd want that number, you know, if it's in the 80 number, that means you can have 2 full-time hygienists running 40 hours a week. So this is a small hygiene department, which again is not great. Okay, yeah, so other than that, I mean, that's basically what I would input into this thing. And again, as we walk through it, I kind of hit on the big facts. But if I'm looking at this practice, I'm saying this practice is worth, you know, want to be sold for 750,000. It's got a relatively low new patient per month. I'd rather have that. If that's in the 40 range, then I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. The other things I'm looking at is overhead. Overhead's great. I'm looking at the hygiene production ratio. Again, this is going to look on the lower end where I'm like, man, I'd like this to be a little bit up more in the 30 range. But still, I'm like, that's okay. Come down here again to my EBITDA value. My EBITDA value is covering my debt service, so I'm good on that. My practice range, this practice is within range if you're a single doctor taking everything. If not, if you're basing this on for an associate, you're a little bit outside of the EBITDA range that I would like. And then as I come down again, I'm gonna look at all these things. I'm gonna look at this hygiene demand. I'm gonna say this is low. I'm gonna look at my recall volume. I'm gonna say this is low. My reappointment rate, which is super low. They're doing pretty good on periodontal and fluoride, actually really great. And then a really low crown of 3/4 filling ratio. So if I'm looking at this practice, what I'm thinking is I would be considering this practice. If I can get my collection rate up, they're already producing a good amount. So if I get my collection rate up, fix whatever that is, if I need to do, what's the word I want to say? Adjust my PPO fees if I need to have a company. I can't even think of the name of the word. Have a company go in there and work on trying to get higher my PPO fees and try to tighten up my collecting finances. All of a sudden, I can have a practice that has potential to get more up in the 1.2 range, but I'm getting at a price of $750,000. And also, I have a low crown of 3/4 filling ratio. I would be reasonably happy with this practice. I would be thinking that this could be a potential practice that I would go for. Again, the only thing that's bugging me a little bit is the low hygiene volume. So again, that doctor per patient coming through, he's doing a pretty good amount of work on those patients. The one thing that I didn't do, because I'm feeling relatively lazy right now, but you can go through and add up all of these to actually get the production amounts. So the diagnostic codes is from like 0 to, I think, 1,000. Yeah, 0 to 1,000 is diagnostic codes. Preventative code is from 1,000 up to 2,000. Restorative is 2,000 to 3,000. And you can actually go in there and add up these total dollar amounts, and it'll actually give you a breakdown on here. I don't really have the energy to do that right now, but the big things is you want to make sure that you don't want about, the lower the specialty procedure percentage, the better, especially the case for us young dentists. We're not going to, especially if you're not doing AGD or an AGD, that you're not going to come in there and be able to do a whole bunch of implants, a bunch of molar endo right off the bat. So you got to be careful if you can reproduce those procedures or not. Anyways, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer more. I know that was kind of a literal rough run through and just me stream of thought. Hopefully you guys can follow, but if not, just reach out to me and I'm happy to answer any questions. All right, thanks.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed listening to Aaron and kind of hearing his insights. One thing I want to point out that Aaron mentioned, and I think I mentioned it in the intro to evaluations video, is how important it is to have the right people on your team when looking to buy a practice. These spreadsheets are a great resource for you to filter out and really find practices that you are actually interested in. So you're not wasting your lawyer or your accountant's time going through these practices. I'm going to leave a few comments on things that popped out to me in the description below, so feel free to look through those. And if there's anything that popped out to you or that you think is important, please leave a comment down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.